Hopefulness 2.0, April 11th. That's the AC unit that was put in yesterday. Got a lot of dishes to do today. I'm going to try to make some pizza though. So the sourdough starter discard recipe that I was reading up on, I was trying to finagle in a way to make sense of the cast iron pizza. But, interestingly enough, part of the description for the recipe is that you can make a larger pizza using close the door. Ah, shit. Half sheet tray. So I can have a pizza this big, which to me sounds great. It's funny, put in the AC unit. It's colder today and it's supposed to be cloudy and potentially even rain a little. So there's that. Oh shit! I gotta do the laundry. Largely, it's just gonna be like sheets and stuff. Just because I don't really have a whole lot of other clothes to wash, and I could maybe wash those in their own load at a future date. Just about half hour ago, just finished having a conversation with a buddy of mine from Sober Living Place. He said that he told me about the situation, potential job. So just gotta hit up the guy that is gonna be running it. Talk about hours and stuff like that, and see what happens. I was looking up the website as well. Looks like a pretty legit kind of place. Still don't know the exact nature of the job. He said it's kind of just observing, making sure people are taking their medication, stuff like that. But we'll see when it comes to because again he's more like a salesman, and he's not. I would say that I'm something of an educator. The way that I approach things, try to learn as much as I can, so that I can synthesize the information and then pass that information on to other people. Now, is that the whole entire purpose? I don't know, or my purpose? I don't know, but that's the approach that I take, because I say that, at least for me, one of the main reasons why I do that is because often I didn't get that in life in some form or fashion. And so when I learn something, when I learn new information, or if I learn something that is relevant in some other way, I try to find some kind of linear path between point A and point B, or point A and point G, or whatever it is, and make sense of the steps in between, so that it reduces the number of questions and increases the understanding, at least ideally, anyway. And part of it is so that I can retain that information too, and I'm a curious person. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in life that I just didn't know about, so I read up on it in some way or another, I can show you now that I have it with me. But back in 2006, when it started raining a shit ton in Texas, it was raining every fucking day. And it wasn't like thunderstorm, heavy pouring or anything, but it was really consistent rain. And I was like, what the shit is going on? And so I started trying to learn more and more, and I ended up going to like the Borders, and I ended up buying this book. Now, not this one specifically, because this one I got more recently. But Twin Falls Public Library. And they ended up selling it, apparently. But I mean, look at these images. They're great. And like, this is the one that I picked up in the library, or not in the library, in the bookstore. And then I learned a crap ton from this book. It was awesome. In fact, there is a page on here. Let's see, where are you at? Because it's all broken down. Like, here's Tornado Alley, all the various tornadoes that happen within a time frame. You know, and it showcases the perfect setup for tornadoes with dry air, cold, dry, cold, humid, warm, humid. Thunderstorms, tornadoes, like winter precipitation. Well, and the index in the back is it's short, but it's extremely useful. I've had indexes that just, like, a term that you would think would be in that book ain't in the book, or at least it's not in the index, and it's stupid. And so, like, here I can go look up hurricanes, and then it talks about Agnes, Andrew, Betsy, Bob, Camille, Carla, Carlo, danger areas, deadliest in the 20th century, deaths, cost, Diane, Dot, East Coast, and blah, 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 port forecasting, etc. Let's see. I don't know exactly which one it was, but hurricanes roughly start at 148. Not 138 there. So, hurricanes, 139. And there was a small part of it, and I want to say it was on the bottom left here. Extremely small. Literally, this section right here made an interesting, what's called forecast, right? And this specific book, and I'm pretty sure this is the exact same book, more or less. It's the same edition and everything as the first one that I got. May 1997. Okay. What a superstorm surge would do to New Orleans. The map below was created by National Weather Service's slush model. It shows water depths on the surge from a Category 4 hurricane following the path shown. If the Category 5 Hurricane Camille had jogged just a little to the left in 1969, it would have followed a similar path. The storm shown would leave water more than 20 feet deep in downtown New Orleans. Mississippi River levees would block much of the surge from the west side of the river. And it's talking about all the heights and everything. And then what happens in 2004? Hurricane Katrina comes in and wrecks that shit. And the levees don't block shit because they break. And even more water. And the reason why this is a thing is because New Orleans is below sea level. And the levees help maintain that. So I already had a very small understanding of what could happen to New Orleans. So when Hurricane Katrina came around, I was like, holy fuck. Well, no, not really, because I read this book in like 2006, so Hurricane Katrina had already come around. So, no, it wasn't that. It was when I saw that. That's what it was. It was when I saw this piece, I was like, holy fuck. That's where it came from. And I'm like, oh, well then. And, you know, they even have an engineer and a meteorologist team up to rate hurricanes. And it's the Saffir-Simpson hurricane damage potential scale with Category 5 being catastrophic. And you've, you know, got flooded houses and shit. And it's like, okay, yeah. And, you know, it's like through my understanding of these things, through reading this book, despite my own misinformation and my information in life, Like, I mean, it shows you that raindrops aren't teardrop shaped. This was new information for me. I had no idea. That's fascinating to me. Comes a hamburger bun. Starts off as a sphere, becomes a hamburger bun, then it gets split into two tinier spheres until it starts getting bigger again. Never knew that. But the reason I bought this is because in that specific month, I was constantly paying attention to weather reports and stuff and trying to make sense of things. Some information just wasn't getting through to me in one way or another, and even though some of the meteorologists are really good at what they do, there were still questions that I had. And so I bought the book, and the book helped me to understand it. And so through this book, I understood more. Now, some of it's still not intuitive to me. It's not second nature, especially because I haven't talked about it in a long time. And, having moved here, weather isn't really a thing that much. It's either cold or it's warm, generally. And then occasionally, once spring and summer come around, we start getting more and more Santa Ana winds. That's a different situation entirely because it's the winds coming out of the mountains. And that's just one thing when it comes to my understanding of something. And so to take it back to the point of all this is like a buddy of mine, like I said, he's more of a salesman. He's the way that he approaches things is get you to commit. It's almost like I don't want to say that it's an emotional manipulation. It's always smiling is a form of emotional manipulation. But I'm not quite sure, and this is a thing that I still don't understand because it's not a character trait that I possess. And I balk from it because it feels unwanted for me. It's like, as an extreme example, it kind of feels like somebody who they ain't just flirting with you. Like they're going beyond flirting. They're doing the touching and the stuff, but they're breaking some of those boundaries a little too much, and it gets uncomfortable, but you're not really sure exactly how to respond to it. And you're just trying to, you're weirded out, you're grossed out, you're whatever by them. You're uncomfortable with their presence, and it's like you don't want to make a scene because of something. I don't know why you don't want to make a scene. Maybe you should. You feel, well, okay, you don't want to make a scene because you already feel vulnerable. The last thing you want to do is make it to where they are the one who's in control, because then when you're the one that is the vulnerable one, the chances are you are less likely to be in a position of power, especially if you are already in a somewhat weakened position, if you will, sort of socially. So let's say you're at a party and you don't really know anybody there, but somebody who does know people who are there and, is like sort of the life of the party and everything is, creeping up on you, touching you and everything, and you don't like this. But if you make a scene, you're the minority. You're not the person who is in charge, if you will. You're the one that has the least amount of power. And so by making a scene, it's very possible, at least in our minds, and I felt this way before in a few circumstances in life. You just try to do whatever you can not to let it escalate, but it's already escalated to a point of discomfort, and you're not even really sure what you should do. There's a sort of paralysis that goes with it. And that is just an analogy to kind of give you an understanding of how I feel about certain types of high pressure sales situations. It feels predatory. Now, Is that to say that my friend or all other salespersons are that way? Not necessarily. It's just that that is how I feel in most of the situations, because I have yet to be able to fully understand their uh, their mentality during said approach. Um, Now, obviously, that was an extreme example that, in and of itself is approaching sexual assault and rape and things of that nature. Get some water. Also, haven't taken my med for today. I don't think I got the double dose because it doesn't even show that it's a double dose on the dosage on the package. So. Yeah, and the top shelf, my old discard was I need to check real quick. See how much I actually have, because that's not 80. Shit, we were supposed to do 2, and it is not, sadly. Oh well. I'll just have to let the psychiatrist know next time I talk to her at the end of the month. I mean, I've been the kind of person to a degree where well, so backing up and trying to sort of regather my thoughts. I want to say recapture, and I think that might actually be more appropriate. Because they are trying to fly away. So when I was younger, hang out with my friends and stuff, I was kind of pushy at times, especially when it came to certain things. And I would always give, I'd give a lot of advice. And I felt like this advice was apropos. I felt like that it was, like, I understood my friends. At least I thought I did. And I think today, I definitely understand them more so. And when you have a helper mentality, but you're impatient, which is definitely me, pieces of advice can definitely come off as pushy. They can come off as unwanted. They can come off as out of nowhere. And especially with being as flighty as me and having a thought and it just, I gotta say it now kind of situation. That can definitely come out of nowhere and make it seem like you're just pulling shit out of thin air, because in a way you are. And that can be jarring for other people. So often, at least now, when I do that, I try to preface it, but it requires kind of a bit of a story. And if the person isn't, if it's not an appropriate transition, that can be difficult. So I have to learn how to transition between what we were talking about and then figuring out how to get it to that point. Also, I'm putting importance on my own thoughts. And in doing so, taking away from whatever the importance was that we were having a conversation before, too. And that can be seen, as jarring, insulting, or some other, negative thing. So there's a lot of kid gloves that come with having ADD and trying to be a supportive person and trying to say, I have this thing, I think it's important, and I think it's good for you, and I hope that this thing that I have is something that you'll take and appreciate. And it's difficult, especially because I'm not somebody who speaks to emotion, generally speaking. I can if I'm making up, if I'm not even so much making up, just kind of telling a story that, about an emotional event or something. That I can do. But if it's about information, it's hard for me to do. Some people are just great storytellers and they're great at evoking emotions. I'm not one of them. So anyway, I'll try to come up with a way to transition and tell a person all that stuff because I used to be really pushy about it. And it was a trait that I didn't like, so it's still a trait that I don't like. And it's hard to empathize because empathy takes time. And I am very time blind, especially in a conversation. And especially if the conversation is going well. And now, granted, if a conversation is going well in the right way, then the transition isn't necessarily going to be hard, and so on and so forth. But I've also found that people who are younger than me will generally listen. At least I think so. Whereas, when you're a peer who's the same age or someone who's literally a year older than you, it's harder. It's harder for somebody to say something that, and then you try to take them seriously, especially if their life is kind of fucked. Like mine has been all my life. So, reconnecting it with my buddy who is this sort of salesperson mentality, chances are it comes from a good place. But I would say, at least based on what I just said, there is an air of empathy that isn't there. It's not to say that it doesn't care. There may be something going on in his brain that makes it harder for him to parse it. It may be ADD-like, not necessarily ADD per se, but it may be ADD-like in that there is a kind of impulsivity because there may be this sense of FOMO, if you will, fear of missing out. And I would say, that is definitely a thing. Now that I think about it, that is like the starting point in so many ways of how so much sales goes on. There is a sense of limited time only. Because, he may be saying, okay, in his mind, and this is me trying to be empathetic and trying to parse what he has said and make sense and try to extrapolate from there. But he was saying, they don't have any people. Or they have people, they're looking for more. And they're training someone now. So in his mind, he may be kind of on edge thinking, hey, Justin, you might not get this chance if you're not fast enough. This might be limited time. There may not be any room for you later. And I get that in a sense. But his ability to communicate that in a way that's a bit more informative is lacking. And it may just be that because that's how he approaches things, like how he wants things he wants things to be said and done. I like a little time. Like even when everything is falling apart behind me, I still want to take my time. It's kind of like that scene in I think it's Pirates 3 where, and I think it wasn't Norrington, it was the other dude. He's like walking down the stairs as the ship is just fucking exploding. It's one of the coolest scenes ever. It's highly impractical. Like there's literally no way in hell a boat that is going to shit that quickly would be stable enough for a man to just gently walk down the stairs. But nevertheless, looks cool as fuck. But the reason is that I brought it up is that's how I approach life. Everything is so fucking fast and chaotic in here that I need to take my time 90% of the time. I need time to think because I need time to, again, to reword and parse. I use it a lot, especially because of EverQuest, and people use parse when it comes to showing how much people deal damage to a specific mob with a lot of health. But it's just a word that it's making sense right now, and that'll happen sometimes. I'll occasionally just find a word and I use it a lot. And then it becomes part of my lexicon. But it's about taking time. So, like, to sort of, yet again, put a pin in that, go back in time, talk about a conversation I had with an old friend of mine where I said that I'm a slow learner. He's like, no, you're a more complete learner. And this circles back around to the very beginning of this conversation, this video, whereby I talk about how I approach things, and then it connects with the last thing that I put a pin into and how I take my time on stuff. So it's not that I'm a slow learner, it's that I'm a more complete learner who takes my time to learn. And in so doing, through that time and through that completeness, I am better able to educate, elucidate, and or illuminate information to somebody. And I can then synthesize that. And through communication with another person, I can determine how to convey what information they need to know. Now, of course, who they are as a person determines how you get that information to them. If they are like my, salesperson friend who is, for the lack of a better word right now, pushy, because again, it may be a limited time only. In his mind, that may be how he sees things. His brain, and this is not an intelligence thing, his brain just might work slower in that regard. And as such, it may be more linear. And so he may not be time blind. He might have a better understanding of time. And he might be like, look, the reality is you don't have time to mull this over. He may be wrong too. I don't know. Might be right. But that may be one of the reasons why he approaches things like that. And it may be the reason why so many people who are like him do that too. I don't know though. And one of the problems I found is that people like him, and again, I'm not using these phrases pejoratively in any way, might not have that time blindness and have a better understanding of the timeline. I don't know though. And so that might be the reason why it's pushy. Now I would say that nobody knows the future, and just because you have a certain level of certainty does not necessarily mean that certainty will come your way. But yeah. So I've got to draft quick email. Got to do laundry. Got to work on a pizza. Got to shave my head and stuff because I got that Zoom interview tomorrow. Put up a bunch of clothes in the, because I wanted to make the room at least somewhat presentable. So I took a bunch of my clothes, put them up in the closet, the rod is a little too thick. It's been painted too, which is not ideal. And so like the hangers that I have only just barely fit. In order to make pizza, though, I'm gonna have to transfer my my frosting over to another container because that's my mixing bowl, and it gets super sticky. I mean, it's got a ton of sugar in it, of course, but oh yeah, and the top rack in the fridge was upside down, and on top of that, my old discard was like stuck to it because apparently it had bubbled up and like some of the liquid on top, which apparently is called hooch. So I guess that's where it's from. I skimmed off a good chunk of that. Then I mixed in the remainder, and then I portioned out 2 cups. And that's where the recipe calls for a cup of it each. And so I'm like, okay, I'll try 1 cup. And if it goes well, cool. If it goes terribly, then, well, unfortunate, but whatever. I think I've got a whole bag still. Yeah. A whole bag of Galbani grain cheese, whole milk, low moisture. This is specifically the type of cheese that Adam Ragusea was using for his pizzas. So I'm gonna do that. Got eggs, I got meat, I got food for all kinds of food. I got chicken. Gotta debone those, cook them up. Those will not be happening most likely today. It depends. I've got a couple of things on my plate today, though. So I've got the pizza, I've got the laundry, and I got the head shavy, and then I got the email to draft up. I've got 4 things to do. One of which is going to take a while. Another one's going to take less time, but still take a while. And another one's going to take less time, but less time than that, but also take a while. And then another one's going to take less time than that might still take a while. Because I might end up on the phone. But, I mean, I don't have any hopes with regards... I call this hopefulness. I say that I don't have any hopes in that I'm not trying to get my expectations up. I'm not trying to get myself into a position to then be disappointed. I'm just... If you start disappointed, then you get to be... You're either pleasant, you're either right, and you're unfortunately right, or... But if you're right, then at the very least, you were prepared for it in one capacity or another. And if you were wrong, then you get to be pleasantly surprised. So, taking the pessimist's route can sometimes be good. Maybe not all the time, though. Oh, yeah. And I took out all my yeast and I put them in here. So now I have a yeast. I couldn't find my damn Sharpie. I got to start doing more stuff. Especially because if this month the fuck's off and I still don't have a job and don't have any money or anything, then, then I'll have to prepare to get the hell out of here at the end of May. But, yeah, if something piques your curiosity, look into it. Learn more about it. Why more hurricanes could hit the U.S. in coming years? I don't know. Maybe climate change. Updates on global warming and ozone depletion. Oh, hey, that's the thing that they talked about. Blizzards and other wild weathers of the 90s. What new weather satellites are seeing. What scientists learn by chasing tornadoes. Discoveries that are making flying safer. Strange lights that shoot up from thunderstorms. Elves and sprites. New scientist profiles of full-color graphics. You know the funny thing about this book? Published in 97, right? This is second edition. I think this is it said 97. I don't know. I think that might be the actual the second edition. Yeah, May 97. Original copyright 92. So here's the funny thing. In this book, I was not even 16 yet when it came out. I'm 40. And it's approaching May of 2022. 25 years later. Now, there's a lot of information in this book that's still very accurate. There's a lot of information in this book that didn't even exist that we now understand. And then to sort of extrapolate, go beyond that, go into a further realm of education, information, understanding of things, physics, astronomy. When I took my astronomy class in the fall of 2000, and then I took the second subsequent one in the spring of 2001, the concept of dark matter and dark energy, it wasn't even just like, I don't even remember if they were talking about it in the book. I think they had mentioned it as a thing that they were looking into. Whereas now we totally understand at least the fact that there's some kind of energy, aka dark energy, and some kind of matter, aka dark matter, that make up the vast majority of the universe. And it's based on our observations of so many factors. And I've learned a little bit about it since, but I don't remember exactly all the details about what makes them dark. They don't interact the same way, which is why they are dark. But I forget the nature of their interaction, or rather lack thereof. Like, dark matter doesn't seem to interact with electromagnetism, which is why we can't see it. So if you think about it, it's kind of like infrared matter in that you can't see it, right? Because we see with colors of the rainbow, the visible light spectrum, as we call them. We call it that because that's what we see things in, is the visible light spectrum. Some things can see in infrared, some things can see in ultraviolet. But evidently, dark matter doesn't interact at all with the electromagnetic spectrum. At least that's my understanding. And dark energy doesn't seem, at least from my understanding, to interact with matter. That part I don't remember. I could be wrong. But that's what's mysterious about these things, is their very nature. Like, why is the universe expanding the way that it is? Based on everything we have, it shouldn't. But it is. So either A, there is a thing called dark energy that's out there that we just don't understand enough of, that is causing this external push / expansion. Or this dark energy will then become clear, and then we'll make more sense of it. And I have a feeling that they are somehow intertwined, and I feel like, this is just feeling, it's based on information that I have, but it's not based on scientific observation of any kind, because I'm not a scientist in that regard. But I'll end on this thought. I feel that once we understand what dark energy and dark matter are, and I feel that we will understand them at roughly the same time, if not equally, that they will be the things that help us come up with the theory of everything. The theory that bridges the gap between special relativity and quantum mechanics. I don't know why. And I know I'm not the only person who's thought that. Have fun.